Welcome. This is Brooke Clance and Carly Dalton, and today we have Brittany Wang with us. She is a YA author, YouTuber, and author website designer, and she recently released the final book in her fantasy series, On Wings of Ash and Dust, which is available on Amazon. And we're really excited to have her with us today. She's going to help us equip you with the tools necessary to get published and be successful. And we're going to start with talking about On Wings of Ash and Dust. Can you tell us a little bit about your series?
Sure. It is, like you said, a YA fantasy, and it's set in an epic fantasy world with 5 fairy clans competing for the fairy crown so they can rule the rest of them. And over the course of the 6 books in the series, we follow a spunky pirate named Quinn, and she risks her pirate life that she loves so much to avenge her twin brother who died while competing for the crown. And instead, in the first episode, you find out she finds herself wrapped up in the same competition that claimed his life. And she faces off with a few other fairies from the other clans. We have a mute beast tamer, a flirtatious merman, a blind artist, and a pompous princess. And throughout the trials, they're really dangerous, and they find in that there's an ancient prophecy that they didn't know about, that all of this kind of dark stuff is happening behind the scenes, and they find that they have to become allies before there's no world left to rule.
Excellent. It's so good. I've read the first one. I highly recommend it. I'm going to read the rest of the series.
It's
so
fantastic.
Her series is a little unique in the sense that it's a serial series. So Brittany, can you tell us what exactly a serial series is and what makes that different from just a regular book series?
Sure. So I have a few notes. So if you see me look over here, I just want to make sure you guys get all the information. And I could talk about this all day. So I'm going to try to give you the highlights. But the easiest way I found to describe a serial series is that it's exactly as the same as the normal book series, except it has 2 main differences. One is that each book, or what's called an episode, is shorter than a full-length novel, making the series faster to binge through. The second thing is that they're usually fast release. So instead of my readers waiting maybe a year or more for the next book, they actually got a new book every 2 weeks during the publishing timeline of 2.5 months. Also, I find this analogy really helpful. So if a normal book series is most like a movie series, so say like The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, a serial series is most like a TV show, but in book form. So think about how they kind of redid the Shadow and Bone books, and they split them up into even smaller stories every episode, or the Shannara Chronicles or Wheel of Time. It's kind of like that, but in book form.
What made you decide to go the route of doing a serial series, and what have been the pros and cons with that?
Sure. So I started seeing a couple authors put out serials, and first it looked really fun, and it was like a new format. And I also saw them having a lot of success in a couple of areas. One was growing their readership, because again, there's like a new book every few weeks. So you sort of organically have a new reason to talk about your new book like every couple of weeks, and then keeping that readership engaged, because again, if you were doing a normal series, a new book might come out every 6 months to a year or more, whereas now your readers are anxiously anticipating the next episode. This was also really right up my alley, because one of my biggest goals was not just to like come out with books or series, but to like develop a fandom. And I felt like when I saw serial authors coming out with their books, they were really engaging with their readership a lot more, and their readers were becoming even more passionate about their characters and the story and the continuing storyline, kind of guessing what was going to happen next and things like that. In my story too, I already saw too that my book, because it was a full-length novel initially, I don't know if I said that before, but it was a full-length novel initially. And when I was thinking about writing a serial, I went back to the story that I was already working on, which I was thinking I would traditionally publish. And I saw that it kind of already had a structure of a serial, because it had these different parts kind of segmented into it. The first episode being meeting Quinn, figuring out how she gets wrapped into the competition. And then 2 through 6, every episode features a different part of the competition, and they go to a different part of the fairy world. So it had this structure of kind of a beginning, middle, and end with each kind of mini arc within each episode. And I had to do developmental edits and like work with an editor and like really make it a lot better than it was and a lot stronger so that each one could stand on its own. But I looked at the story and was like, it's already kind of structured that way. Wouldn't it be so cool to come out with a new episode every couple of weeks and the readers kind of feel like they're experiencing the competition almost in real time with the characters? So I thought that that would be really cool too. So financially too, you usually invest in an editor for every book, which can get kind of pricey, but it was really cool with my serial that it was basically hiring an editor to edit one book, but then I made 6 books out of it. So at the end, I spent as much as I would have with one book, but I end up being a published author of 6 books and like a full length series at the end, which was also very cool. And overall, I felt like it just like really went well for me. I mean, it's my first time publishing, but I felt like after talking to some of my published friends, they agreed that like my sales and my sell through and the engagement I was having was like really good. So I was like, definitely worth it for me. But some of the cons were that I had to do a lot of explaining over and over of what a serial was, because, you know, it was like a new format. So readers were like, oh, your covers look cool and your story sounds interesting, but I'm confused about what's a serial and how is this going to work? So it was a lot of educating, which wasn't necessarily bad. It was just, I had to think of multiple ways to kind of reinvent like how I was describing it and make it fun. The other thing is that each episode is shorter than a normal novel, which is not always readers' favorite thing, but I kind of had to spin it and say, hey, you get to binge like a whole series. You get to rack up books for your reading list in a really short amount of time, even though these books are shorter, and they're all about like 20 to 30K words, where some of my readers were even finishing a book in like one day. So again, kind of some positives in there, but some hurdles I had to kind of jump through where people were like, wait, how short is it? I also had to explain why they were only ebooks, because a lot of people love paperbacks. You know, obviously I've got a whole shelf of them. But the ebooks, because a new book was coming out every 2 weeks, if someone ordered a book when it came out, they might not get the book until 2 weeks later when the next episode was out. And I had a lot of ambitions to do like read-alongs and activities and things that would really engage my readers. So I kind of had to go through this thing of like the benefits of the ebook, and anybody who was willing to like jump in with me and wanting to do the kind of in-process read-along activities, to really stress that try out the ebooks. They're going to be fun. We're going to do a lot of cool things. But yeah, not everybody was super excited about that. So, but I'm still going to have the paperback come out with all of the ebooks together into one full novel. So in that sense, again, there's kind of a positive because I get to re-promote my whole series again as one book organically, you know, a few months later, which is very cool. And I'll just finish up because I know there's a lot of things I'm saying, but a couple other cons are just things to think about if you're thinking about doing a serial is you do pay for multiple book covers at once. For me, I found an artist who was in my price range and was very affordable for doing all the book covers. But I did have to pay for all of them, although I didn't have to pay for the paperbacks because they're not paperbacks as ebooks. And then releasing a book every 2 weeks was a lot. Like I needed a good 2 solid weeks of like not doing anything after it was all over. I will say it was a lot of fun and I don't regret like anything I did because it was just a really great success. But I definitely would change a few things next time, like making sure that all of the books are completely like formatted, proofread, like not having to do any editing, because I was still kind of applying some proofreading edits as the books were coming out, and that was a little stressful. I might also kind of extend how long the episodes come out, so like maybe every 3 to 4 weeks, just to give myself a little more breathing room. But those are the only kind of cons I could think through.
That's awesome. I love the analogy of like when you're saying you're trying to figure out how to explain it better, but like when you said the episodes, like Shadow and Bone, like how they broke it up into episodes, but it's all just one book. Like that makes sense. Okay. You just put that in book form. I love that.
That's really popular right now.
I love that. Yeah.
I know. And like, you know, like people are always like dreaming like the book could become a movie. The book could become, I want a TV show. So like, I already have them all written. Like I almost,
I did all the work for you guys. The screenplay should be easy.
Screenplay is done.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about how you outlined Quinn's character arc and across a serial series?
Sure. So like I said before, the book was written as a full-length novel. So I definitely knew where she was going through the whole series, which kind of helped. I think if I had started out with knowing that it was going to be a serial, I probably still would have thought through like, okay, where do I want her to end up at the end? But the challenging thing, because I had already written it, was now that I have to split it up into episodes, what are like the mini arcs that she's kind of going to have to go through within each episode in order to get to the final growth point at the end, which is kind of what you want to do in a novel anyway. Like they're continually growing, but they have these like stepping stones, right? So I had to think about what stepping stone for her character is going to happen every episode and kind of develop that a little bit more. And for her specific character arc, I knew that I wanted her to start out being kind of like a loner and feeling like she had to solely depend on herself, because I wanted her to become someone who found that her true strength comes out when she learns to forgive and learns how to trust again. And that working with others, especially those that are different than her, actually is a great strength. Kind of this like stronger together kind of deal. I love books where there's like that misfit crew that comes together and that they accomplish something bigger than they could ever do by themselves. And then even more personally for her, she has a lot of wounds that she's dealing with, a lot of lies that she's grown up believing about herself, which has sort of led her to this pirate life that she thinks she's meant for because she can't do anything else. But I really wanted her to kind of have to deal with that pain, kind of get stripped of everything that's kind of protected her and her masks and her weapons, and kind of look at where she's come and the things that she's done in the past and find redemption from those things and learn that who she really is and how the things that may have caused pain in the past out of her can actually bring good in the end. So those were the kind of things she was learning.
I feel like what you did really well is like sometimes like you have books that are more character driven or plot driven. I feel like yours is very much a both. Like Quinn's character arc is very, I mean, right, chapter 1, you already get her flaws, you get kind of understand like, okay, she's got a lot to learn. She's going to go through some stuff. So it's like, you feel it right from the beginning. So you kind of already talked about how you outlined. I mean, you said it was the first a novel and then you decided to break it up into those episodes, but do you have any other tips for how to outline a serial series or things that you would have done differently?
Yeah. So I think kind of what I was saying before, like kind of building off of that, is that I would outline where you want the whole series to go, both external, kind of plot, like you were saying, and then like character development. And then kind of identify what are those key stepping stones that the character and the plot are going to need to then get there, and then kind of building an episode around those things. And I think it's really great when you can partner, kind of like what you're saying, of like the character development and the external plot and how those things can work together and actually complement each other, and kind of they can grow together and develop together, and kind of play off of each other. So those are like kind of the overall outlining that I would do. And also knowing that like with everything you write, things change as you write it, So one thing that I've learned, because this is like the first story that I've not only finished, but like really worked on hard enough to actually publish, is that I spent so much time outlining, like so much ridiculous time. And there were things that changed and there were things that needed to develop. And there was feedback that I got that it didn't matter that I spent months and months and months outlining, like it did, like it definitely helped. But I think what I would do in the future is maybe spend like a week or two kind of outlining and then fast draft and then get feedback and then, edit and then get, and keep going, because I think I just stunted myself a little bit because I spent too much time outlining, trying to make it perfect the first time. So that's for anything, but for serial, I think it was really helpful for me to have written the full story or all the episodes, and then kind of go back and like, work on each one. I do have another serial series that I'm thinking of writing that I don't know. I think I might try this other avenue of like kind of outlining the whole series, but like writing episode 1 and kind of getting some feedback on that, and making sure I'm on the right track, and then letting that kind of develop and like maybe change anything that's going to happen in the next episodes before I write them. I don't know if it's going to be better or if it's going to be worse, but I think those are the two kind of ways I could see going about it, and then seeing which one kind of works for you. But again, I think for the structure of my book, it was also really helpful to kind of have that competition structure. And so I would think too, not only those stepping stones plot wise, but if you can, especially like external plot wise, if you can identify those different key moments, or like I had different locations. So every time we got into a new episode, you needed a setup, you needed like, we're in a new place. And then we had the development of the characters preparing for the competition, and also getting to know each other a little bit more, getting to know what this mystery is, happening in the background. And then by the end of the episode, there was the actual competition, and you found out like who won, and if there was any other like plot things that were happening, with a little bit of a cliffhanger that led into the next episode. So if you kind of think again, like a TV show has that beginning, middle, end, and then like a little bit of a cliffhanger. And I actually took the master class from Shonda Rhimes, who is a TV show writer. She wrote, I'm going to forget now, baby brain.
Grey's Anatomy? I took her master
So
class. It was awesome.
Oh yeah. So
good.
I loved Shonda Rhimes' class. She really broke down a lot about, I didn't take everything from it, but it's especially like outlining and like structuring the episodes. I took some things from her class and kind of integrated it also into how I was writing and like outlining the series.
So it seems like, because it's like each book has like its own little arc, and Quinn almost has her own arc in each book. I've read the first one, and definitely she had an arc, so I'm guessing that'll continue on. So it seems like, would you say that it's more or less depending on your book if it'll do good in a serial series? Like not all books are for that, because you had the competition in a different setting each time, so it worked really well with your series. So would you kind of recommend authors kind of, try to outline it, but if it doesn't work, it's not for every book?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think series, like it works better with certain stories than others. And I think what I've said to some people who have asked me, like, how do you know if, it should be one or the other? The first thing I'll say is like, look at the story. Are there already like natural breaks, sort of mini arcs? But if you're not really sure yet, like just start writing. And if you end up with a novel or like a series of novels that are longer, like you haven't lost anything. You could always publish those. So I wouldn't get too stuck on like, I'm going to write a serial, and if I don't do that, I'm a failure. Like I would just say, write the story and figure out as you're writing what the story is calling for. If that makes sense.
I like that. Yeah. You don't have to be set on a serial. You could, like yours started off as a novel. You can always kind of flip back and forth. I like that.
Yeah. And I was looking at traditionally publishing that book and starting to like write a series that was meant to be a serial. And like, I had this like epiphany of, one, like, do I really want to traditionally publish this? Do I really want to go that route? And two, this, like, I saw the structure in it, and I was just like, I got to try this. Like, I have to at least like send it to beta readers in this format and see if it works, and that's another thing that I would say is like, get feedback, like send it to beta readers, send it to critique partners. And if they think it's working, then you have that proof to kind of go off of. And if they think, I don't know if they're like that strong, or like there's enough content in here, but I think it would work really well as a novel, then like that helps you kind of make that decision too.
Really good advice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any other tips, any other tidbits that you would want to recommend to someone wanting to write a serial that we haven't talked about already?
Let me think.
We've talked about a lot of it.
I think I'll just add that I would read other serials. Obviously you can read mine. But there's a few other authors. Sarah Kale Wilson has a serial called Dragon School, and I think one or two other serials. She has some full-length novels too. And she was one of the ones that actually had some interviews on YouTube about writing serials that I was like watching and taking notes on. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting and cool. So she had a lot of success with Dragon School. And then Sarah Cannon, they're both Sarahs, which is interesting, but Sarah Cannon, who also writes full-length novels and series, also came out with a serial. And so I think it would be really advantageous to, pick up a couple serials and read through them, and study them and see why they work or why they don't. And also watch TV shows and take notes on that, kind of if you're studying TV show structure, or even like the 15 beats from Save the Cat, most TV shows will have most of those beats in there. You can kind of study that and see, okay, at this point, here's the setup and here's the midpoint and and how did they get there, in such a short amount of time. So I think that might be really helpful too.
Awesome. Good.
One other question I have actually, would you recommend serials for a certain audience? Like, do you think it would work better for a YA audience versus an adult or middle grade audience?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I have enough know-how or like experience to know specifically, but I saw other serials in my genre. And so that was encouraging to me to say it's worked before. If there aren't any serials in your genre, I wouldn't say that it couldn't work, but I would, try to do things again that kind of test it out, like with beta readers, or if you kind of tease it out on social media, or put an episode out for free, and see what people think. And like, hey, do you guys want the continuation of this? If you want to try a contemporary or something like that, then, then you can kind of find out before you commit too much time and too many resources to something that might not work for your audience. So I always love trying to find ways to like test things out before I make a decision.
I love that. I like just testing it. Like you release one for free and they're shorter. I mean, you can do them 20, 30,000 words. So you're not putting a ton. I mean, still a lot of work. That's still a lot of writing, but it's not a full length novel. So I like that advice.
And you could also, you could put out for free, like on Amazon, or you could say, hey guys, like I have, the first episode of this potential, series that are going to be shorter, but you can only get it if you sign up for my newsletter, so they sign up for the newsletter, they stay subscribed if they really like it. And then when they're telling you, oh, like, I can't wait for the next one, they're already ready, like you send up the next newsletter. Okay, I'm editing, the next one, like it's going to come out in a few weeks, like get excited. You can kind of build momentum and get people's buy-in early.
Perfect. Well, I love that. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for doing this for us. And we'd like to know, what can we expect from you in the future? Are you working on anything new?
Yes, progressively over time. I have a few projects. I am pregnant right now, so who knows what's going to happen. But I definitely have the paperback, which will have all the episodes. So for those that weren't as excited about the ebooks, you can get the paperback, and that is coming out in June. I haven't set a firm date, or January, baby brain. So in like a month or so, you'll be able to hold it in your hands, which is very exciting. But in addition to that, I have an outline for season 2, which I will most likely release again as a serial and then put into a paperback that'll be like book 2. So I definitely want to work on that. I have another serial series that I think the first season will probably be more like 4 or 5 episodes, called Sisters of the Shadowwood, which is a mashup of fairy tale retellings, but it's kind of like Once Upon a Time, where all the fairy tale characters are in one kind of town. All the fun stuff are happening there. And then I have a standalone that I'm thinking could be cool, traditionally published, that I might query first. And if nothing happens with that, I'd love to self-publish it too.
Ooh, awesome. That is exciting. I love the title. What is it? Did you say Sisterhood Shadow? What was it?
Yeah, the sister of No, I'm like second guessing it. Sisters of the Shadowwood. So there's a forest kind of surrounding the town, and part of the reason why there's like magic in the town and different things. And so these girls who aren't technically blood sisters become like a sisterhood because of things that are kind of going on in the town. And each of them, like one's Little Red Riding, or based on Little Red Riding Hood, one's based on a female Robin Hood, one's based on a teenage Cinderella's fairy godmother, and one's based on Midas's daughter, who turns things to gold. So
how cool. That sounds like something I'd be very interested in reading.
Oh, good.
I love Once Upon a Time. I was so sad when that series ended.
Oh, me too. Oh my gosh. It was one of my favorites. So yeah. So like, and this is a perfect example, guys, of like kind of sharing a little bit about your story and getting that feedback. You know, that reaction was so great of like, oh, that's something that I would love to read. So that makes me even more excited to invest time into it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I hear that all the time, like spitball your ideas and see what people say.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Well, that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Brittany, for joining us. And be sure to check out Brittany's young adult fantasy series on Amazon. It is called On Wings of Ash and Dust. The first book is Wings of Betrayal. I just read it and I loved it. And also check out Brittany's YouTube channel. She gives out writing tips and tricks. And also you can learn more about her books on there as well. And we'll link all of her social media accounts in the description below. And you can check out her website where she also offers more services. Be sure to join us next week when we have Brittany talk about marketing. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.